Today on the Blazers Are Cool show, we're finally going to talk about Toumani Camara and Deni Avdija, our best two players and our final two players in these preseason player previews. We're going to talk about each of their best case, worst case, and expected outcomes this season. For Toumani, since we know how much of a defensive beast he is and how good the Blazers are on that side of the ball, he was a little bit easier to project. But for Deni, since he's so important to the offense, which is the side of the ball we have a lot more questions about when it comes to this team. We have a pretty lengthy discussion about what his role looks like on the team and how the other players fit around him. So if you're a big Deni fan, I would stick around to the end for that. But without further ado, let's talk about Toumani Camara and Deni Avdija. Brad, we've finally gotten to the end of our preseason player previews. We've arrived at the two best players on the team, the two favorite players on the team, the two players who both broke out last year. Both of them were in top 10 of MIP voting. Both of them,
Really?
Yeah, both of them.
I did not know that. That's awesome.
The two of them are pretty solidly in our core of the future. I think we're going to ride and die with these two players maybe more than anyone else right now. I think there's outs with other guys, but with these two guys, especially with the contracts they're on for right now, which are incredible, they are really, really valuable players. Let's start with Toumani, because I think Toumani is so beloved. When you like, there's really nothing you can say bad about Toumani. You can say he could do things better, but I don't think I hear anyone ever talking slander about Toumani. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, 100%. And which shows that I think there's like evil in me because it makes me want to like critique him.
Where are the faults?
Yeah, what can I find? But I feel like we had years of Damian Lillard, as much as I love Dame, a Damian Lillard led defense, which was just atrocious. It was awful. It was just those teams are so horrific to watch defensively. And Toumani is just like it's like our reward for having to deal with that. And what's so funny about Toumani is like you said, everyone praises him so much to the point where I would wonder, like, is he as good as we think he is? Like, are we remembering him well? It took a quarter of preseason basketball to be like, oh, and then a couple games where he didn't play to be like, oh,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not only is he awesome, but Jesus.
Everything seems to fall apart whenever Toumani is not on the court.
Which he might be the least regarded player, to the general public who is that valuable to a team. And I know he was an all NBA defender, but it's like, gosh, dude, when he's in versus when he's out, you see just this massive difference.
I think it just all starts with him. Like, when he came about and we discovered how good of a defender is, especially how versatile of a defender is, that he is picking up the best player on each team every single night. What that does is that's where you have to start, and then everything else falls into place after that. And when you don't have that crux, everything just seems to fall apart. Like, yeah. We talk about all the time about how Jeremy's a good defender. Makes Jeremy a lot worse when he has to start guarding the best player on the court sometimes. There's a lot of guys who get downhill a lot faster and make it a lot harder on Klingon defending around the rim when they don't have Toumani shadowing him. Yes. Like, it really feels like with the way this team is constructed, which is from with the defensive side of the ball in mind, he is the epicenter of all of that. So it doesn't feel like hyperbole to say that he's the most important player on this team, because I think as we're learning, especially in this preseason, we have no idea who's the most important offensive player. And we're going to spend the entire season trying to figure that out. But we know who's the most important defensive player. Maybe it's Klingon close, and that'll get there. But at least at this moment, we know that Toumani is the engine of the defense. And I could give you a take of, like, Toumani is, what if I said this? Toumani is as good of a defensive player as Dame is an offensive player.
That's how it feels. Right? It really is, dude. That's how it feels. And it's kind of the similar vein where it's like we won all those games last year because Toumani went like had a prime, because remember Dame, we'd be playing horribly, and then he'd have a stretch of 15 games where he'd average like 50
Yeah.
and 5,
Yeah.
and we'd win like 14 of those 20 games and then get to the 8th seed.
Yeah.
Like that feels like what Toumani was in the second half of the season last year, but on defense. So yeah, I think that's a super fair comparison. So you're 100% right that he is a piece of a puzzle that makes all the other pieces fit. I picture him like, again, I'm keep staying with this lame puzzle analogy, but I picture him being that middle piece
Yeah.
in like a Survivor puzzle,
Yeah.
where every other piece is around it.
Right.
You take out that piece, all of a sudden it doesn't really work. And that's even for true for Klingon, who, we're super high on. Like
Yeah.
we were so high on Klingon defensively. I thought tonight against the Jazz, you kind of saw how much he's dependent on a guy like Toumani to, and this is true for any defensive player. We saw this when Toumani was playing with Ayton and Shaden.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, no matter how good you are, when you're with those two, what were last year, big shout out to how Shaden's been playing defensively this year. I love it. Or in the preseason. But you take a guy like Toumani and put him with Ayton and Shaden last year. We had the 29th best defense in the NBA.
Yeah.
So the second worst defense in the NBA with Toumani in the lineup. So like we're talking about, it's the fitting the pieces together and finding the best lineup. But right now with all these guys, you see him as that middle piece that makes all the other pieces fit defensively.
Yeah. And it's, again, like we've been saying, it's so important to defense, which is what we've been talking about with this team primarily, and trying to be that good on that side of the ball and hope everything else comes around. That's why, to me, because of how important he is to that side of the ball, anything we get from him on the offensive side is a bonus, right? But I feel, and I think for those who've really been listening to us for a while, know that we differ a little bit on this, but I feel that Toumani has one more jump in him offensively. Now, whether that's actually being able to create, I don't know, but I think it's...
Can I spoil it? It's
Well,
not.
It's not.
I'm kidding. Maybe not, but
I think I agree with that, but I think I think his offensive leap is most likely to come from the 3-point line and being a true sharp-shooting 40% three-point shooter is one way he can get a lot better.
I think he can. I'll change my take on this because I used to think like, I think we've basically seen for the most part what he's going to be. I actually do think he's going to take another step, but I think it's going to be not a step into becoming a different player, meaning like going from this is a huge exaggeration, but like Toumani right now reminds me a little bit of like a rookie Kawhi. However, I do not think that Toumani is ever going to take that step to becoming that player, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which, or even like a smaller extent of that player. The guys that I could see him, but I could see him doing this. I could see him becoming basically the best version of what he is right now.
Yeah.
I think that's what his next step looks like.
Yeah.
Because you look, the Kawhi comparison is fun and interesting because you look at Kawhi's sophomore year in the NBA, he averaged 12 points and 6 rebounds on 37% shooting from 3. Like, that's identical to Toumani.
Yeah.
But then the argument becomes like, okay, then what does that next step look like? Because ideally, he can take another step and evolve from what he is now to a different and better player. But like I'm saying, I think he does have another step to take in just refining what he is right now. And I think we saw that in that because he clearly was dealing with some sort of injury that he had in that first preseason game. But we kind of saw, I think, what that looks like. And it's not becoming Kawhi Leonard. It's becoming KCP, or it's becoming Trevor Ariza was a name I've been thinking a lot about because Ariza had a similar like beginning to his career where he was this like insane defensive player on a championship Lakers team, and then was able to develop into a 15-point per game score guy. But honestly, those guys weren't even at, obviously Kawhi was, but Trevor Ariza and KCP, and I'm going to throw another name, Shane Battier.
Yeah.
So when you're comparing them to guys like Ariza and KCP, who I think everyone would agree like, oh, that'd be cool if they became that type of player. I think he can be like a better defensive version of those two guys, which are championship level players. All NBA defensive version of Trevor Ariza is kind of how I see his final form, in a form that I think is going to come much sooner than later. I don't see Toumani. Maybe this has to do with his age, because again, he's 25. He's older. Or is he 26 now or 25?
I don't think he's older than 25.
Yeah, I think he's 25. But he's I could end up being, because I didn't think he'd make as big of a step last year as he did. But I think his final form is going to come much sooner than later.
I think the best way you can put it is like he checks a box that, like we're saying, every championship team needs. And so we don't really need him to be a ton more than that. Like if he just, what you just described, gets really, really good at that role, like a slightly better player than KCP and Trevor Ariza and Shane Battier, like that is golden. I'm not asking him to do any more than that. So I think that's why everyone's so pleased with Toumani, because it's like
he feels like such a guarantee.
Yeah, and you look at a guy like Shaedon, and it's like, okay, what does Shaedon need to become in order for the player that he is to become, and not to make this video about Shaedon, but to become like that championship level of his type? And you're like, it's so far to go, but you just see that Toumani is that close, if not already there. And I think everyone would agree with that. So I think that's why Toumani feels like the favorite child right now.
Yeah.
In everyone's eyes. And again, because everything he's going to give us on the offensive end is a bonus.
My ceiling and prediction for him, I think, are the same. For some reason, dude, it took like one quarter. And that's something I'm also working on, is not being so volatile with my takes. Because like I said, it would take a quarter of Caleb Love for me to be like, who was atrocious tonight. But if he has like a good quarter next game, I'm going to be like, okay, this guy could be. Dude, I just think Toumani is going to be the best version of himself starting this season, which means just making a couple more threes, jumping from, what was he, 37%?
Yeah, I think, but as a whole year sample.
The way he shot, and again, it's the preseason, and I go so back and forth and being like, how much value should I put in preseason games? But it's more the way you do it than the actual, you know what I mean? Than the actual result, I guess. Because the way he was shooting, the confidence he took of him, how much trust you all of a sudden had in him shooting, it's like, oh, he can be a 39% three-point shooter, 40% three-point shooter. And that would be so freaking huge for this terrible shooting Blazer team. Like, I'm watching these guys like, oh, maybe we're not going to be as bad at shooting, because it's looking like we could be bottom 5.
Yeah.
Easily.
Totally.
A guy like Toumani being a 40% three-point shooter now feels so close. The final former Toumani is going to be a 40% three-point shooter, just a little tighter on defense, because he's an all-NBA defender. But there is you can tell when you're seeing a second-team all-NBA player compared to a first team, where it's like Toumani can be explosive. Like you said, he's like Dame on defense.
Yeah. Where
it's like he can have a 20 stretch game where he looks like the greatest. And he still looks good in his less than perfect games. He still looks amazing. But like the final formers, you watch him, you're like, oh, this is like, mwah. This is perfection. It's like prime Kawhi type defense, which he's very close to. He's already a top 10 defender in the NBA.
So, I mean, to bottle all that up, are you saying his ceiling or his best case scenario you're saying his best case scenario and what you think are going to happen are pretty close? I would describe what you told me as like best case scenario, just barely a 40% three-point shooter and just barely on or just missing the first team all NBA defense.
I could see him being very similar, and I really mean this, to Defensive Player of the Year, first time Defensive Player of the Year Kawhi. Just a slightly not as good offensive player. Because that year, Kawhi put up 16 and 7 on 48-35 shooting, and was Defensive Player of the Year.
48 would be very tough for Toumani. 35, I'll be very sad if he doesn't shoot that.
Exactly. Yeah. I see Toumani's being like a 14 or 15 point per game scorer this year on 40% three-point shooting, and is a first or second All-NBA defender, but a similar type of player because
Yeah.
Kawhi was still really raw and being like a playmaker, a scorer off the dribble. All his points came from spot up threes, good cuts, having like a couple nice drives a game, and he was able to put up 16 a game with that. And I see Toumani being a similar vein to that.
It'd be wild for us to sit here and say that his best case scenario is not first team all defense. I'll say his worst case, I think, would be like the 3-point shooting just regresses and then it becomes an offensive problem.
Mm.
And I think when kind of in a similar vein of like if there's one bad defender, the whole ship sinks. Like when everyone else is around you is so bad at offense, it makes it harder for you to be a good offensive player.
100%.
So kind of the inverse of the defensive thing.
Because he already had the easiest shot selection in the league last year.
Yeah.
Or top 5 or something.
And if defenses are a little bit more keyed in on him because they don't have to guard Anthony from the 3-point line, and all of a sudden Toumani Camara is our best 3-point shooter, which I don't really think that'll be the case, but it could be. And if that's people are really guarding him like that, it could unravel. So I think worst case scenario for Toumani is like drops down to like 35% from 3 and like 9 points per game. I just think that makes him not as good of a...
No, you're right. That would make, because I mean, you have to be able to play offense if you're an NBA player.
Yeah.
And you're right that he is someone who relies a bit on shots being created for him by the gravity
Of
or
the
lack,
other guys.
yeah, the gravity of his other teammates.
Yeah. I think our final guy, Deni Avdija. I kind of think Deni's like the opposite. Like Deni could go on to a pretty bad team right now and really uplift them. You could put Deni on the Nets, and the Nets win a lot more games than I think they're going to win this year by just putting him on, because he is a one-man offense a lot of the time.
Yes.
He is so good at getting downhill and scoring and ones. It is crazy. I think I've described it before last season. Like, it's a superpower, and it's hard to find guys in the league who have a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels nice that Deni has one, because I think that brings his ceiling higher than any other player on our team. When you see a player that is kind of good at a lot of things but not really great at anything, it's hard to like feel enamored by them. But when you look at Deni and you see his ability to run in transition and score through contact, and he's also underrated lately, like just crafty once he gets to the hoop with his footwork and his timing and his pump fakes. So he's his
ability to get to the free throw line, dude. That's another thing that like we see it every single year. The best players in the NBA get to the free throw line, and he does it as well as anyone,
because he's just so strong that he just breezes right through the contact, but the rest are still hearing that smack on the arm. So he's so good at all of those things. And so I think, we're so sure of Toumani being great at what he does, and we're relying on him. And I think it's in a very similar way with Deni, but I think the trepidation for us is that...
Ooh, nice.
You like that
Sorry,
one?
keep going. Trepidation. You were just...
The trepidation for us is that Deni is so important to the side of the ball that we are so scared of, and that we don't have a lot of help on, and that we have a lot of question marks. So we need so much more out of him this season. We need him to become even better and to take over and be Superman on that offensive side of the ball, because we don't know if the help is coming from anywhere else.
It raises like a few questions because, we're huge Deni guys. We have been from the beginning of last season. Our earliest prediction on this show was that by the end of the season, this is before the season started, we said by the end of last season, Deni's going to be our best player. Like, he's going to be seen as being our best player. And we were right. And there's a reason for that. You watch him, and you watch him in international play. You watch him the second half of last season where he put up 23 and 8, I think were his averages.
I don't know for the exact second half, but I know he was torching.
Post All-Star break, he put up 23, 10, and 5.
Yeah.
In 20 games. The concern a little bit with Deni is because we all know the good. We saw those unbelievable games at the end of last season. But my worry a little bit with him is, like I've talked about already in this video, is how his puzzle piece fits with everyone else. How we can best use Deni, how Deni can be not just the best version of himself, but the most valuable member of the team. Because like you said, I have full confidence that he can put up huge, awesome numbers and make a bad team look much better. I do have like a little bit of concern of how much he'd be able to keep that up when he's not getting as many touches, because and he's deserving of it when he's on. He's a pretty ball dominant player. He likes the ball. He likes driving to the hoop. He is more of has more of a superstar play style than a connective piece play style. But in order to have that play style and have it work on a winning team, you need to be really, really, really good. And that's why his ceiling feels so high, because at his best last season, you thought, oh, this is an all-star. Like, this is the kind of all-star that we want. At the worst, though, you kind of get a little concerned about his fit next to a guy like Shaedon, if Shaedon has the breakout year that we're all hoping for him to have. Because it's a very fine line between someone who's good enough to be an all-star and someone who's not. And he, I think, is right in between that. And I think that's what we're going to find out this season, is how he's best used. If he is that kind of guy that's like, oh, he's a first option that needs and deserves the ball as the first option. Because my only critique of Deni is that I don't think he's best as a connective piece. I think he's best as the main guy. And that does raise a couple of questions if Shaedon is also that type of player.
The way you describe that, I think, is correct. I don't feel that that's a knock on Deni.
No.
And
I think he has all-star potential that he could easily reach this year.
Right. I think, again, there's so many players on this team we feel like are in a very big year, because I think the reason is that we're trying to figure out which ones are the ones and which ones are we going to we've just been waiting for so long to figure this out. We tried it with Ant, and he fell off the totem pole, right? So
That's
now
exactly
we're left
right.
with Scoot and Deni and Shaedon. Which one of these guys is going to finally pop and take command and be a first option that everything else on the offensive end can build around?
Yeah.
My thing, and you're right, I'm not sure if Deni totally is that, but he, for me, is the clear leading candidate to become,
without a doubt.
Right. So, like, everyone can see Shaedon's ceiling, but, like, Shaedon's flaws are so much easier to see, that it just feels like his runway is a long time away. So you're right. I think Deni should be used as a full-on engine, as a full-on, like, Luka type player. I'm not saying he's Luka, obviously, but we should just see how far we can go with that. But I don't see that. I don't see us fully buying into that at all. And I think it's pure. We're not going to really give it to him with the way we're playing. It felt like the offense we were so excited by, to me, kind of started to fall apart as this preseason went on. So I don't know. I think he can reach a higher ceiling, but I'm worried that his full ceiling won't be achieved because we're not going to fully lean into that, because we just can't.
Well, here's what I'll say is I know I want Deni to have, when he's in the game, to run the show.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact. I know I want that to happen. But the question is just that, is he good enough to do that on a really great team? And because ideally for me, I've always said this, I want us to do our best to recreate the 2000 Blazers. Because most great teams, they get lucky by getting a guy like, Wemby.
Yeah.
But the teams that don't get lucky and do really, really well and are contenders are teams like the 2000 Blazers, which don't rely on one single star. Because if you're building a team that is relying on one guy, you're going to get beat by any team that has a top 3 player in the NBA, because their one guy is going to be better than yours. Yeah. You have to create a team that's better than the sum of its parts. That's where it gets not worrying. Worrying is not the right word, but that's where some questions come up, where if we're going to run a team where with Deni or Shaden as the guy, where we're playing them like they're superstars, they need to be a top 5 player. And as much as I love Deni and I love Shaden, I don't think they're ever going to be a top 3, top 5 player in the entire NBA.
So they have to both kind of figure out how to work together.
They got to figure out how to work together,
it's hard to see
they got to.
now.
They have to, not play that much together, because I think the best case scenario for Deni is he is a 23-10 guy, or 23, 8-5, who cleans up his turnovers dramatically to be a really great.
That's a big isolated thing with him that he needs to clean up.
It's the biggest thing to work on his game. And sadly, in preseason, it didn't look any better. The best case scenario is that he's an all-star type of player on a top 5 defense in the NBA. And that's the kind of level he can get to. And he cleans up his turnovers, which makes him much more valuable as a playmaker, and a guy who we don't need to play him like an all-star type of player. And he plays not as a sole focus of the offense, but as a piece to a much bigger thing. Because that's how the 2000 Blazers were. No one averaged more than 16 points a game, and we had a top 3 defense in the NBA. You can say the same thing about the 2006 Pistons. You can say the same thing about any great team that didn't have a clear superstar. Because if you're building a team, like I said, around having the best superstar, you're not going to win unless you have a top 3 superstar. So you can't build your team that way. And I love how we're building the team, because I think that's exactly what we're, not doing, is we're trying to build a team with depth who plays defense. And best case scenario is Deni becomes the best player of that. The Rasheed Wallace of that team. Rasheed was the best player on that team. He only put up 60 in a game at a much slower pace. In modern NBA, it's probably looks more like
when you account for inflation.
Exactly, how to account for inflation. It looks like 23 points a game, but Rasheed was unbelievably selfless. And I think Deni can absolutely be that player. It's just that he needs to clean up the turnovers so it allows him to be that.
I think Deni is going to rise to the top as get on my back. I will try to take this offense. I'm a little worried that the turnovers aren't going to go down.
Yeah.
But I think with the looks he's going to get, the way he's been playing better, he's growing. He was a full engine with Israel in Eurobasket. I think he's going to ratchet up to about 22 a game. He's going to have some nights where he shoots the 3 well, and that'll ratchet him up to a 30-point game. He's going to have some nights where he shoots the 3 poorly. That'll keep him down at 16. And I think he's going to be a pretty counted upon, reliable, 21, 22 points per game, be a great rebounder, because rebounding is going to be a really big focus of this team. He's going to get about 7-8 rebounds a game. And I think those assist numbers are I don't know, probably 5 a game, but
huge.
I worry that the turnovers are going to stay high, and I think that is still going to hold him back from being a fully evolved, really efficient player. So I think it might get slowly better over the season, but I still just worry about it because I still just from what we saw in the preseason and how fast he goes, and just how keyed in he's going to be from other defenses, that I think he's just going to keep a pretty steady linear path from what we saw at the end of last season of it's not going to be like that March he had for the whole season, but it's going to eventually get to a point where you can count on Deni for that. And you can't I don't know if we're going to get to that point where Denny's an all-star by the end of this season or he's going to pop, but he's going to be really counted on. He's going to be a fringe, just a tier below all-star, and he's going to be the clear best player on this team when other teams look at him from afar. When a casual NBA fan looks at the team, we're going to see that. Because he's kind of already that now, but I think it's going to be clear soon. That's how I feel for it. And again, there's probably other ways where Deni will need to grow in the future in order to keep expanding. He's not maybe going to be able to just take this heliocentric model of a player he is and that Luka style player and turn into a player that can bring you all the way. He's probably going to have to learn other stuff along the way. But I think this year he's going to hone in on being as good of that as he can.
Sure, dude. Do you have your thesaurus out for this episode? I mean, maybe I'm just stupid and heliocentric and
Trepidation.
Trepidation is just a big word. Trepidation, is that the word?
Trepidation, yeah.
Trepidation. Yeah, I don't know why that doesn't sound right to me when I say it. Maybe I'm just dumb.
Too
Maybe
many-
worst case scenario, and I think like the best worst case scenario you can think of is that Deni is a guy who needs to be the center of the offense when he's in the game. And what that looks like, where that works well, is in a 6-man role. And I'm saying again, this is kind of worst case scenario, but one that I would still be really, really, really stoked about if it worked correctly. Because like I've talked to you about this, like I envision if things really don't work out for him as an all-star level player, is that he can be a different type of all-star level player, I guess, and being kind of a Manu Ginobili role on this team. A guy who plays 27 to 30 minutes a game, but comes off the bench as a guy who is the center focus of the offense, which Manu wasn't really when he was with the Spurs. But that's when he was at his best, is coming off the bench to a really like balanced, well-rounded team where he could come in and be that incredible, like, I can't believe this guy is coming off the bench, and be just a killer and insanely valuable player that way. Because like we've talked about, it's about being not the best version of yourself, but the best, most valuable player on the team. And worst case scenario, I see him being like a Manu type of 6-man on this team, a guy who clearly needs a ball in his hands, and it's the best opportunity for him to do that.
I think if Shaedon pops and then Jeremy's back to like what Jeremy was, that's pretty much the only way I could see that happening.
Sure.
So if Deni's worst case scenario hits, I think this team looks really good.
I agree. And it's one of those weird things where it's like, if that happens and Jeremy and Shaedon and Toumani are good enough that they need, if all 4 of those guys need to start, it doesn't become a matter of who's better. It becomes a matter of what works best. You know what I mean? Which is an amazing problem to have. The problem isn't saying, oh, Deni's not good enough. It's saying he's so good and so are all these other guys. And the way to make sure he's as best as he can be is as a 27 to 30 minute bench guy who just can take over the game when he's in the game and dominate that way.
I mean, it'd be pretty awesome to envision a world where Scoot and Deni come off the bench together. That offense would be pretty electric. And with Hansen, if he go like that offense sounds pretty fun with those 3 moving the ball around together on that.
It'd be awesome. I just said a lot. I said a lot about Deni that I think could be seen as doubtful or negative. But I want to just say this. I have zero doubt that Deni is going to be a really good player. My thought process is just always, like I said with Toumani, or with all these guys, is how they fit in the puzzle. I think he is a ginormous puzzle piece. I worry a little bit about his fit on the team if a guy like Shaedon has a huge breakout season. It has nothing to do with Deni, because we know he's our best player right now. We can say he's our best player, and I can say that kind of unquestionably. I worry about the fit if Shaedon has the breakout season that we think he's going to have.
Well, let me just circle it back to, I think, the point we made at the beginning where, like, Deni can bring we're very confident that Deni can bring a not as good team up high. We're not quite as confident, in the opposite way of Toumani, that Deni can fit really well into a team of players who are all good at niche things.
Yeah.
And so,
like, fit really well on a great version of this team.
Sure.
And when I say fit, I mean as the player he is. Because of course he's going to be a great player. But is he the best fit on a team where Shaedon Sharp's an all-star?
Yeah.
I mean, as a starter, I think he absolutely would be. Because it's more just like he's so good that I want him to be the main focus when he's in the game.
Yeah.
Which is why I bring up the bench thing, not as an insult, but it's like I want to see I want to see Deni dominate. But I also want to see Shaedon dominate. And I hope I'm wrong about this. I easily could be.
Yeah.
But I find their games to be not complement each other all that well.
The problems we're saying with Deni, or the questions we have with Deni, all stem from everyone else being good and us being a good team that is not like the Nets that we're saying that Deni can elevate. So it's like a best case for Deni on his own might come about if everyone else sucks and we have to get on his back.
Yeah.
A worst case for Deni might be if everyone else is good and Deni doesn't have the room to be that takeover guy that we've seen that he's so good at. And then it becomes, can Deni be the takeover guy sometimes, but the connective passer guy other times and take a backseat? We've overloaded this team with tons of talent, and we've known that for a while. And we finally have one in Deni where we're like, is this the guy that we let go? Like, let become the number one and then build around him. Like, maybe get rid of Shaedon and maybe get rid of Scoot, trade them for pieces that fit around Deni. And we're not 100% sure we can do that yet. We have to hang on to Scoot. We have to hang on to Shaedon. We have to make sure we know what we have. But we're like thinking we're close.
But
Is
I don't
it
think
Deni,
this,
right?
I don't want Deni to be the clear number one. I don't think that is a version of this team that exists where Deni is so good as a number one that we can be a contender based off that.
Right. It's not Deni.
He's more just got to be a great player surrounded by other great players where they all mesh together perfectly.
That's the best outcome for this team.
Yeah.
But I think how I feel is that from what I've seen from Deni so far is that Deni is at his best when he is more of that focal point. But the Blazers can't be. But the Blazers, as we're constructed right now, don't feel like they can be that.
That's exactly right. Deni is at his best when he's the main guy, but we're not constructed in a way where him being that guy benefits a guy like Shaedon. My idea of an ideal Blazers team is basically a defensive-minded version of the Pacers.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we're doing. But the thing is that they all work so well together as the piece. They're like 10 different smaller puzzle pieces. It's going to be non-stop puzzle analogies.
Well, with all that being said, we've wrapped up our player previews, getting very, very ready for the season, starting in 5 days. For our final video before the season starts, we will give you guys a record prediction as well as a couple other final thoughts and predictions that we have aside from the record. So stay tuned for that. Come on Monday is the plan, at least. And because we've run a little long, there's nothing else to say, but I think like for us, subscribe for us if you're ready for the season, and Blazers are cool.
Blazers are cool, and they're getting cooler.
And they're getting cooler every day. Later, guys.
See ya.